Okay, so Underwater, which is directed by William Eubank and starring Kristen Stewart and Vincent Cassel of La Haine.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was in that film.
Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff.
It's also got, is it TJ?
TJ Miller, yes, which I've heard there's a controversy about
there
recently,
is.
wasn't there? Because basically, this film was shot in, I think, 2017. And then because of the whole Fox and Disney merger has been on hold for ages.
So what's this his scandal then?
It must have been shot before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's...
So I think his scandal was that he's an alcoholic or something like that, and he keeps showing up drunk on set to like Deadpool and stuff.
Okay, because while researching this film, I did see occasional things being like, oh, it's interesting that TJ Miller's in this film after the incident. I was like, but what? And I didn't actually get around to researching
what I've heard about it. I don't know if there's anything else, but I feel like if he did something major, they wouldn't have released the film.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So, I mean, yeah. But it's interesting that this is the last film with the 20th Century Fox logo. Yeah. Unlike Call of the Wild, I don't know if you noticed, had 20th Century Studios, which is the new Disney sort of hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basic plot. I mean, it's been described as wet Alien, in that it's Alien but set underwater.
Okay. Wet Alien, it.
I mean, the plot is
moist.
Moist Alien. I have also some people have said it's actually close to The Descent, but I haven't seen The Descent, so I can't say either way.
Yep.
In fact, for me, it reminded me of Wet Inferno, the old Doctor Who story. Not called Inferno, not Wet Inferno.
Wet Inferno.
So the plot is basically there's a big deep sea like sort of mining rig in the Mariana Trench. They're trying to drill into the Earth's crust and find. Well, that's the thing. I'm not sure if they actually specified what they're searching rather than just adventure. Presumably there's some resource.
You know what they're searching for, Nick?
What?
The Call of the Wild.
They're not going to find it down there. But which is why it reminded me of Inferno, because that also dealt with a super deep borehole into the Earth's crust that results in alien nastiness.
Alien Nazis?
Nastiness.
Alien Nazis. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, can I please get on?
Yep.
But yeah, so of course the horrors of building a deep underwater platform is there's a lot of pressure. And guess what happens?
They break?
Yeah. Actually quite abruptly. It's interesting, the film begins and we have, I'd say 2 minutes, maybe 3 tops of Kristen Stewart just sort of wandering about, brushing her teeth, and then everything explodes.
Okay.
And, so basically the whole base is sort of complete, getting crushed and compromised, and there's only about, of 300 crew, there's about, 6 of them left. And it's like, right, we've got to get out of here before we die. There's some escape pods over on this separate site. We've got to get out of this place, cross the ocean floor on foot, and escape.
Okay.
So that's the basic plot. It
does sound a lot like Aliens.
Yeah,
and Alien, I suppose. But...
Well, it's closer to Alien in that sense. We've got this sort of main characters on this sort of isolated on this rig of some kind, and it's like, there's no unlike in Alien, there's a big thing about like they're basically space truckers, and the sort of the glorification of space travel is normalized. It's just this is their job. And in the same way, there's no sort of like, oh, look how cool it is we're underwater. It's like, this is our job. We're underwater. We're technicians. We're engineers.
Yeah.
And there's that kind of vibe to it, and it is essentially a horror film, and essentially a slasher film in the way that we've got a main cast that gets whittled down. In fact, actually, it reminds me in some ways of Sunshine. Well, I don't know if you've seen the Danny Boyle film.
I've seen bits of that film.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the whole thing, but I know what you're talking about.
But in that, it's because in Sunshine, the conceit of it, at least as far as I can tell, was it was a slasher film where the killer was simply the hostility of space travel, until at least the weird Freddy Krueger monster appears and starts killing people, which is when it officially lost me. Which is an interesting comparison to Underwater, because it starts with just the horrors of underwater exploration, but people being killed by pressure locks and failing suits, and then creatures show up, which I think my main thing in the film is it sort of gets weaker as it goes along, because when it starts and it's just simply like, maybe making a really deep undersea platform is a terrible idea, and it, inherently flawed, but then it's like, oh, and here's some weird alien creatures, and it's like, well, okay, I get, because obviously there's this whole thing about, and it's going back to the cosmic horror thing about we're on the bottom of the ocean floor, we don't know what's down there, fine, but consider what's going to be on the bottom of the ocean floor? What are they going to look like? What incredible, indescribable designs are going to have? Oh, they're basically just human-y things.
Are they?
Well, you've seen the trailer, haven't you?
Well, I've seen the trailer, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they're only in the trailer very briefly, but it's fashion. They've got a head and a torso, and they've got 2 arms, a finger. They're basically humanoid.
Oh, I thought they were like big squid boys with mouths.
No, well, no. There's a sort of like a sort of squid baby they find briefly.
What?
Like it's the baby form of them, and we see like the adult form, which is basically.
So I thought they were like huge. Are they not big? They're just
no. They're normal human sized. I'll get back to that a bit later.
Okay.
But so that's the film conceptually, and in terms of what I found sort of wrong with it, because at first I thought, okay, it's interesting. It wastes no time getting started. Like it's straight in there. It's like, right, here's our characters. Here's the peril they're in. It's a very sort of... So going back to what I was saying about The Shadows back in my blog, about when you've got a sort of a horror survival film, we don't need deep backstory to understand why they want to survive and escape alive. It's a pretty straightforward thing.
Makes sense, yeah.
So I liked that it sort of got into it. But the problem is, I think there's too little of it. In the sense that there's no equilibrium.
No characterization.
Well, there's no characterization, but it's also like we don't see what life was like before everything went to shit.
Which you do in Alien.
Yeah, in Alien there's a solid hour before anything really happens, so we get to see what their lives are just like normally.
Yeah.
So the emotional weight of something like this is from seeing them in the relatively like in their natural state, and then everything goes wrong. With this one, things go wrong so quickly, we don't have any reference. For as far as the audience is concerned, our entire point of reference for their world is this.
Yeah. So that's just bad pacing then, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like essentially... Well, that's the thing. This is interesting, because the trailer, I think it's just the way it's edited, but it implies that there's a bit... We see them enter the base and stay for a while before things go wrong. I couldn't find anything about it being cut online, but it does feel, because it's also just about 90 minutes, it feels like there is like a first act that's just missing.
Okay.
Which I think would have made it a stronger film, because it would have given that extra bit of context that might have made it work a bit better. So going back to the monsters, one of the things about them is, as I was saying, like they're basically humanoid. I think it's really rubbish that they could have done anything with the design, and I went for that.
I mean, sky's the limit, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but then going back to your thing about cosmic horrors, this is cosmic horror.
Well, yeah.
This is the horror of what is down there, that we can, anything could be living that deep in the sea and would be so weird in its design, it would essentially be alien.
Yeah, I mean, half of what Lovecraft writes about is from the sea, because he was for that exact reason.
Exactly.
It's like no one knows what's down there because they find Cthulhu under the sea.
Yeah.
Dagon's under the sea. Loads of these big spooky boys are from under the sea, because he was obviously terrified of that exact concept of what you're describing.
So this is going to be a bit of a spoiler. So if you do care too much about underwater, scribble forward ahead. I'll put a time code on the video now. But yeah, so here's the interesting thing. The creatures in this are supposed to be deep ones.
Really?
Yeah, I was reading about this. The director William Eubank said the main creatures are supposed to be deep ones.
They're supposed to be, as in Lovecraftian deep ones.
Because you mentioned there is a big one at the end, which apparently is a spoiler because it wasn't in the trailers from what I can tell. That's Cthulhu. Cthulhu just shows up at the end. This is...
What?
But this is... Exactly. This is... Like, I don't know if it's worth a whole spoiler corner, but like, this is the thing I don't get about it, is that we have this sort of relatively grounded, like, oh yeah, it's just... Because I thought it would just be like, it's just the water crushing everything. I thought it would be cool if we had just the suggestion that maybe there's something out there, or maybe it's simply, the horror of even knowing if that's what's the problem, but like, oh no, Cthulhu just sort of shows up.
And do they say it, name it?
No, they don't. I had to look it up. And
they don't directly say, that's Cthulhu.
But I thought, he looks a bit like Cthulhu. And I researched it because I was like, I might mention this in the podcast. And then I saw, Eubank was like, yes, it is supposed to be Cthulhu.
What? Why?
But that's the thing, but also, I mean, I know we have imagery of Cthulhu.
So the deep ones aren't from Cthulhu, they're from Dagon. So he's got that wrong.
I was like, surely, I thought deep ones were the whole Innsmouth rather than Cthulhu, separate mythologies,
Dagon, so deep ones praise Dagon, who is like the god of,
Well, that's what I thought.
They just stick Cthulhu in it and have a nice time.
And also...
Okay, that's so random.
But here's here's the thing. Guess what they do with Cthulhu in the end?
What?
They nuke him. Because he starts... So they get to this other drill. And they send... Basically, of the 3 escape pods left, only 2 are functional. So Kristen Stewart sends those 2 off. And then she's just got Cthulhu break into the base. And so she sets the nuclear reactor to go into meltdown. And just nukes Cthulhu.
Does it kill Cthulhu?
Apparently.
Well, it shouldn't.
That's the thing. Because we have this massive explosion, and then it cuts to, like, sort of newspaper bits being like, 2 survivors from the project, whatever it's called, mining sites. But the CCTV's been confiscated. And then it's just credits. And like, what? You cut right, but you can't. You can't just nuke Cthulhu.
Well, that's someone who clearly hasn't understood.
Yeah, that's someone who's seen the imagery of Cthulhu and is like, that looks cool.
I mean, that's
Let's
fine,
use
like,
it.
Yeah, use
but
it.
without knowing what it is.
I feel like they've sort of got away with it by not directly saying
Yeah.
this is Cthulhu and Lovecraftian, but that is someone who's obviously misunderstood what Cthulhu inherently is.
And here's the thing as well, because Cthulhu, at least this version of it, still looks like a person. He's got like a face and a body, and he looks like this. And he sort of wades into the base.
Have the wings?
No, he's got a lot of tentacles-ish.
Right.
But like, I mean, it's... But that's why I don't get, like... So, with going to cosmic horror, the whole thing is it's indescribable. It just looks so bizarre.
Well, to be fair, Cthulhu is one of the only elder gods, or, one of the only things Lovecraft does actually describe.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that has got the imagery attached to it.
But then, which is fine, but like... Why would you then redesign... Even do your own monster that's all, like, in its own way bizarre and uncanny, or don't design it to look based like a massive man.
Yeah, that's...
Which I found really lazy, and it's sort of it. I felt it was leaning towards the sort of like the generic horror films where it's like sort of like they look more like ghouls kind of thing rather than like underwater creatures. But yeah, also talking about the ending, it's as I was saying, like it's so abrupt. It comes out of nowhere, and like so the main character presumably dies.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, now we would like some context to know a bit more about you, but no, okay.
No.
And then straight to credits, no real sort of like, concluding act or sort of outro. So, yeah. But...
So, just quickly, what do you think of, what was Kristen Stewart like? Was she good?
I thought she was really good, actually, yeah. I thought she, she's essentially the Ripley character.
Yeah.
But I think she's, she's stoic, but she's still got plenty, she's not too tough. She's not too Mary Sue. She is just like, she's scared, but she's level-headed. She is emotional, but not too much.
Yeah. See, I quite like Kristen Stewart.
I think she's actually. I think Twilight's done her badly. She's actually. She seems like quite a good actress. I've seen her in. I think Into the Wild as well. Talking the wild, there's a lot of wild in this episode. Yeah. But yeah, she's a good actor, and I think So overall, it's a film. It's not a bad film. It's enjoyable. And I mean, it's really well made. Like the production design is on point, and as a concept, with a few tweaks and just I think the monsters and the creatures shouldn't not be in it, but I think they should be reduced and made more sort of vague.
Do you like the aesthetic of it?
Yes,
because one of the best things I think of the Lovecraftian world is the aesthetic. Like that's a big draw to me. Is that the aesthetic of it, and I think also it's interesting that they've gone for that kind of thing but not sold it as that, because that's such a good IP with such a massive fan base behind it. You'd think they'd jump on that straight away, but
I think I might be tactical though, considering how surface level it is. It's like they've I feel like if Lovecraftian fans watched it wanting a Lovecraft film, they'd be slightly pissed off to say the least. But yeah, I mean, it's well. What I think it is, it's the seed of a great idea.
Right.
What I want to see more films like this, but just stronger, and all these sort of things that I think, because underwater is such a great setting. As in, not the film, the setting being underwater, like deep. It's it's basically the same as space.
Yeah. But I was gonna say, like, you've played Subnautica.
I've seen you play.
You've seen me play it. I'm terrified of that game. Yeah. But that game to me is incredible because there is nothing scarier to me than that vast, huge emptiness of the water that anything could be in.
Yeah.
And realistically be in. Whereas in space, it's empty. The vacuum.
Yeah.
But also nothing can survive in it.
That's,
Whereas the water, everything does live in it. And
Exactly. That's what I find
terrifies me.
You know, we've got the same sort of differences of pressure as an enemy. In space, it's lack of pressure. In water, it's too much of it. But either way, sort of the same result. But we've also got the knowledge that there are things out there in the water, but in space, it is empty. So I think as much as I love space films, less films in space, more films underwater, especially sort of horror-y sci-fi things.
I think underwater things work better as a game, though. Well, I don't know necessarily, and that might just be from the lack of films, but Subnautica is brilliant.
I would say it's a lack of films, because I think that's more that horror works better as a game because of the interactiveness, I'd say.
Yeah, but it's not just the... I mean, you could. It's not just the horror elements that make Subnautica so good. You know, it's the different. You know, the vibrancy of some parts of the ocean versus the emptiness of other parts, and I think that works very well. Whereas space is just empty.
Yeah.
Underwater's a bit different. Well, I don't know. Like maybe I should see it. Although.
I think it's worth a look. Cause it's by no means a bad film. I enjoyed it, but I do think it definitely it loses you as it goes along.
Yeah.
But I think with a few tweaks, it could be like a really solid horror sci-fi film.
Were there any moments where you were like, "This is shit"?
Mainly when the first time you properly see one of the deep ones.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. Okay, it's that film. You know, I was like, I thought this was being really interesting and sort of different. It's like, oh, we've gone sort of generic 2010s horror shock.
Yeah.
And just from a design aspect, I just felt that's the main. I think the creature design is what lets it down the most.
Right.
And also just the presence of them at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's.
I feel like you've got to go with, well, not one or the other, but like in Alien, you're never out of the space itself isn't a massive threat, is it?
No.
Whereas the alien always is. Like the space is there, and obviously it's eventually the thing that kills the alien. But with the thruster as well, you know what I mean.
I mean I think you're reaching a bit there.
But it's not an enemy itself, is it?
No, it's just sort of it's an environment. It's a sort of a way of entrapping someone in a situation.
Yeah. Because the space serves as, well, you know, space no one can hear you scream. Like, they cannot get any help. Like, that's the draw. That's what makes the space scary. Not it's the alien itself is where the horror lies, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think in underwater, I think there's enough sort of threat from the being underwater itself that could have just survived as the threat in itself. But again, like I like the idea of a threat of a monster without ever clearly seeing it or knowing how much impact it's having. Yeah. I think is all where the true sort of potential in this idea lies.